Hello, welcome back to Weekend Live. New economic data may not be enough to convince Australia's Reserve Bank to cut interest rates next week. Although the latest unemployment and wage growth figures were encouraging, there are still reasons to be cautious, including global factors. Let's speak to Nataliya Ilyushina, an economist at RMIT in Melbourne, known as Dr. Pink. Nataliya, great to have you back on Sky News. A lot has happened since those last wage growth and unemployment numbers came out. Wage growth up for the first time since last June. What's your reaction to those numbers?
Hello, Alex. It's definitely a welcome announcement that the wage is growing, and 3.8%, it's not just a large number on its own, but it's outpacing inflation, meaning that the wage is not just growing, but the purchasing power of it, or a real wage, is growing, which is definitely good news in terms of cost of living crisis. But what is concerning about it, that we don't know if it's matched by increased productivity. Because if it's not, it would be inflationary. And that's not the word we would like to hear right before the Reserve Bank meeting.
And can you explain that a bit more for people? So that means that rather than getting rewarded for doing better at your job or taking on more commitments, it's essentially people saying, hey, I need to be paid more because everything's costing more.
Yeah, that's in a way. And the problem is that what this large increase was driven by is largely the enterprise agreements, which is negotiations between the unions and the organizations. So we're not sure if it's through the market bargaining power where the employee is actually more productive and therefore the wage was increased, because 3.8%, you might say the wage needs to be indexed. Yes, that's correct. And it's outpacing inflation. So that part that exceeds inflation should represent an increase in production. Otherwise, we simply have too much money in the economy compared to the goods and services, and that will result in inflation.
OK, so cautiously good news about wage growth with those sort of conditions you just explained to us, the unemployment rate remaining largely steady. How is those two sets of data going to play in to the RBA's rates decision next week, do you think?
Well, both of them are not pointing towards the rate cut, even though the rate cut is almost certain. The strong wage growth and the labor market strength points towards that economy is doing well enough and doesn't need a further stimulus. And unemployment rate at 4.1% has been stable for almost a year now, again pointing towards no need for another rate cut anytime soon.
And how much are global factors going to play into it? Because the RBA has to take the decision as far as Australia's economy is concerned. But of course, there has been optimism globally, hasn't there? Certainly surrounding the decrease in the sort of tariffs war between the USA and China. Maybe there might be a ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine. So potentially this sort of doom and gloom that we've seen worldwide, possibly lightening just a little bit.
Correct. That's been a little increase in certainty. However, we should not expect a decrease in volatility from Trump. The announcements keep coming every day. This situation is changing surrounding the tariffs. And Reserve Bank governor in her speech in April did mention that it's still too early to see how the global uncertainty works through the economic indicators. Indeed, all the economic indicators we have right now, except the unemployment rate, are still up until the 31st of March, meaning they do not include the global announcements of tariffs and how they impact on our economy. Of course, the pause on tariff war with China gives us a little bit of a breathing space and the stability. But again, it would be more prudent to actually wait and see how the global uncertainty works through into Australian economic indicators before making such a decision on a rate cut. Because remember, there is only 4% left to cut, and we did run into a similar problem during COVID, where there was almost nothing left to cut further, called liquidity trap. And speaking of global issues, the US government, the Fed, they didn't cut the rate just earlier this month.